Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Joy podcast. I'm your host, Joy Ravella. Now, today we are taking a look at wisdom. Now, for some of us, wisdom comes naturally. We are observant people. We like to find out new things and apply it to our lives. But on the whole, for most of us, we have to work hard at getting wisdom. Now, the beautiful thing about today's Bible verse is that it really encourages us to seek wisdom, but to also know that it is attainable. Let's get into today's verse.
I would have you learn this great fact, that a life of doing right is the wisest life there is. If you live that kind of life, you'll not limp or stumble as you run. Carry out my instructions, don't forget them, for they will lead you to real living. That's Proverbs chapter 4 verses 11 and 12 from the TLB.
Today's guest on the Everyday Joy podcast is George Pink. George, so good to have you here.
Well, always a privilege to be chatting with you, Joy.
Now, on yesterday's episode, you shared a little bit about your vocation, things that you do, but one of the things that I don't think many people know about you, you have run a few marathons and half marathons.
Yeah, well, technically I've run one full marathon. I sort of have an idea in mind to do another one, but yeah, at this stage it's just very much an idea because as I found out when I did that marathon, 42 kilometres, believe it or not, is quite a long way to run. Yeah, absolutely. So I've done a few half marathons. In fact, I think I've done a dozen of them. I've done 12 half marathons, and that's probably more my sort of, was about to say my comfort zone. You know, let's not kid ourselves, it's not that comfortable. but yeah, that's more me, I'll say.
Now, I'd love to unpack this at a later time in a later episode, but for you, you weren't necessarily a super fit, athletic person throughout your... Sorry, it sounds savage, but it's because I know some of your health journey and the amazing pivot you had, I think when you were about 26 years old, I believe?
Yeah, oh gosh, you know my story better than I do. But yeah, a few years back, certainly, I made a decision that I needed to get a little bit healthier and I needed to care a little bit more about this body that God had given me. And yeah, since then it has been a journey, and running's been quite a big part of that, but so has watching what I eat and drink. And yeah, I mean, it's still very much a journey. I don't think I've I've clocked it, I'm going to be healthy for the rest of my life now. It's something that I personally have to be quite intentional about. But yeah, there's been some progress by the grace of God.
12 half marathons worth of progress, George. Don't sell yourself short. Now, we are talking about running today, but not necessarily the physical type of running. It's about being able to move through life with ease because you are living a life that is wise. That's what I take away from this verse when I read it. George, what is your first impression of this one?
Yeah, same thing really. I was struck by those words, wisest life. And you know, those words, they actually remind me of the significance of wisdom. Wisdom is a really important theme in the book of Proverbs. You know, we're looking at these verses from Proverbs chapter 4, and especially in the first few chapters of Proverbs, really it's wisdom. It's so much about wisdom. And so as I hear these words that we're looking at in today's episode from Proverbs 4, I'm just reminded of the significance of wisdom for our lives.
Which leads really well into this next question. We might have answered it a little bit in the first one, but what does this verse tell you about what matters to God?
Well, I think it matters to him that we live wisely because he values wisdom. In fact, looking at the little heading above this particular chapter of Proverbs in the Bible that I have, it says, get wisdom at any cost. And then at the specific verses we're looking at, it talks about the wisest life there is. So I think this verse or these verses tell me that a wise life, a life of wisdom, actually it's something that matters to God, and really as I reflect on it, hey, it should probably matter to me too. A wise kind of life is the kind of life I want to live.
Yeah, you save yourself a lot of trouble, honestly, if you live with wisdom, acquiring wisdom. My younger sister, 5 years younger than me, but she's incredibly wise, not because she's been through a lot of things in her own life, because she's quite an observant young woman, and so she's looking at other people, their mistakes, my mistakes, and she's really been able to avoid a few pitfalls because she's seen how it affected me in my life. And again, maybe a topic for another day, but I guess, if you're listening right now, you can gain wisdom by being observant. You don't have to go through all the tough stuff and live through it yourself. I heard a quote once, George, it said, smart people learn from their own mistakes, wise people learn from others.
Ooh, that's good.
It's a good one, hey? How has this verse come alive in your life, George?
Wow. As you tell that story, Joy, I'm thinking that I tried to impart some wisdom to somebody else recently. And it led to a bit of an argument, actually. This was with a 4-year-old. And if you're thinking, oh, come on, George, pick on someone your own size, I'm going to clarify. It was a pretty tame sort of argument. The 4-year-old and I were talking about tomatoes, as you do, and I asked if he knew that tomatoes are a type of fruit. However, the 4-year-old was not having a bar of this. He disputed it. I insisted that tomatoes really are technically fruits. He was adamant that I was wrong. And actually, it's probably fair enough because I think I was a whole lot older than 4 years old when I discovered that tomatoes are not a vegetable, but, are really a fruit. And ever since, it's been one of those fun facts I like to share, especially with 4-year-olds. It reminds me that there's an old saying that knowledge is realizing tomatoes are fruit, but wisdom is not putting them in a fruit salad. And I think it's a nice way of pointing out that sometimes there's a big difference between knowing stuff and actually being wise. And so if we're thinking about, applying this idea in real life, Joy, well, I guess I have every time I made a fruit salad and I haven't put any tomatoes in it.
That's wisdom. That's me being wise today. Proverbs 4:11-12. Tick.
Check out my fruit salad, guys. No tomatoes. But, I should probably make a serious point. And it's that, wisdom is something that I'm constantly trying to seek. In several places in the Bible, it talks about wisdom coming from God. So, we've been talking over the last few minutes about how wisdom is really important, but I think we also need to recognize its source. Wisdom comes from God, and it's something we can ask Him for. So that's what I'm doing. I'm praying for wisdom. I'm asking God to help me be wise.
On today's episode, we talk about wisdom. Not just the fact that wisdom is good, although that is a major point of this verse. It talks about the fact that we have a responsibility to learn this great fact, as it says in Proverbs 4:11-12. It says, carry out my instructions, don't forget them. And so today's application is honestly just a question. And it's a question I hope you can ask yourself truly. When was the last time you sought God's wisdom? When was the last time you opened up your Bible in pursuit of knowledge? Not necessarily in pursuit of an answer that would solve your current problem, but actually growing in your wisdom. When was the last time you reached out to a friend or family member or someone you trust who's got great knowledge on a particular subject and you want to know what a godly person thinks about a certain thing? When was the last time you intentionally went out to grow your wisdom? Because it is something that you can grow. And that's the second part of the application today. That you don't have to be born wise to be wise. You can grow in this area. And I don't know what life experiences you've had. I don't know what words people have spoken over you. I don't know what mistakes you've made and you're thinking to yourself, I'm not a wise person, I'm a fool. And you know what? We all do foolish things. But we can always choose to pursue wisdom. In fact, that's a decision that you can make today. And a really cool way to grow in wisdom, I watched a video on this online ages ago and it always just stuck with me. It's the fact that the book of Proverbs has 31 chapters. And if ever you want to grow in wisdom, a great place to start is ask yourself, okay, what's the date today? And then open up the corresponding chapter in the book of Proverbs, have a read, pick the one verse that just really jumps out at you, and then dive into it. Explore it, journal around it, find stories in real life or in the Bible where this proved to be true, and apply it into your own life. That's a really easy and practical way to grow in wisdom. What does that look like for you today? Well, that wraps up today's episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. If you'd like to get in touch, the email address is below. Catch up next time.